nearly 297 million shares traded. The other key indexes all closed lower as well. NYNEX closed down a quarter. The Baby Bell is cutting nearly 17,000 jobs by the end of '96. The cost of those cuts reflected in the company's $1.25 billion fourth quarter loss. Flagstar losing a quarter, the restaurant operator closing or selling 270 restaurants over the next year and a half, including Denny's, Hardee's, and Quincy's. Texaco gaining 3/4 after posting an 8% increase in fourth quarter profits. And IBM rallying 3 3/8. Tomorrow, Big Blue expected to post its first quarterly profit in nearly 2 years. That's the latest in business news. Inside Politics is next.
This is Inside Politics with Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff in Washington.
Thanks for joining us. Deputy Defense Secretary William Perry says he is ready to step in where some bigger names have refused to tread, the hot seat at the helm of the Pentagon. President Clinton announced today that he is nominating Perry to replace Defense Secretary Les Aspin and fill the void left by Bobby Inman's surprise withdrawal. We get details from our senior White House correspondent, Wolf Blitzer. Wolf?
Judy, President Clinton says that Deputy Defense Secretary William Perry emerged over the weekend as his clear favorite to succeed Les Aspin at the Pentagon. The president says Perry is the right person for the job, the best indeed qualified right now, someone who knows how to cut defense spending while at the same time taking advantage of the latest in defense-related technologies. Unlike Admiral Bobby Inman, who told reporters last month he needed to achieve a so-called comfort level with the president before accepting the nomination, Perry was effusive in his praise for Mr. Clinton. And Perry strongly denied the president had to twist his arm to accept the nomination.
No, I did not have to be persuaded to take the job. I met with the president to discuss this job Friday morning, and I left that meeting fully prepared to take on the job. I had a meeting with my family that evening because it's not just me that's getting into this job. I put them under considerable strains when I do it too. And we had a follow-up meeting on Saturday morning with the White House where I told them that if I had to accept the job at that time, my answer would have to be no. I met then with the Vice President, and he told me I could take my time, take some more time on the decision, meet with my family further. I took advantage of that, and on Sunday afternoon, I called the Vice President back and said, if you still want me for your Secretary of Defense, I'm eager to serve.
The president denies that he offered the job to anyone else. He insists that news reports that he did offer it to Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Sam Nunn and that Nunn turned it down were simply not true. He said he did speak to Nunn a year ago during the transition. At that time, Nunn did tell the president he was not interested in the Pentagon slot. He asked Nunn in recent days whether that position still held, and Nunn said that it did, and as a result, it was dropped. Mr. Clinton says finding a replacement for Aspin after Bobby Inman stepped aside was not difficult.
It wasn't easy to fill. It wasn't hard to fill. I mean, we had an abundance of talented people to consider, but I asked Secretary Perry, and he said yes, it wasn't difficult at all. We didn't go on a big search here. We had a very short list, and I quickly narrowed it to one. I had an interview with one person. I asked him if he'd take the job, and he did. I don't think that qualifies as difficult. Now, I have had some difficult positions to fill. This one wasn't.
Perry also says there is nothing in his background that he knows about that could cause any embarrassment to himself or to the president, including any problems relating to withholding Social Security taxes for household help. Judy?
Well, if I hear what the president and what Mr. Perry are saying about nobody was reluctant, but there were these reports over the weekend, and he did say that initially he didn't want to, he wasn't able to say yes. Why would the White House want anybody who was at all reluctant, even the slightest bit, after what they went through with Admiral Inman?
Well, Dr. Perry, his close associates at the Pentagon, as well as senior administration officials, are going out of their way right now to make it clear that Dr. Perry himself was never reluctant. He wanted, though, to have an opportunity to discuss the ramifications of becoming Defense Secretary with his wife, as well as his 5 children, who were spread out all over the country. He had an opportunity over the weekend to discuss all of those ramifications, and by Sunday afternoon, he was able to tell Vice President Gore if the president still wanted him. He was, of course, very interested, and it was only this morning, Monday morning, that the president finally made up his mind and asked Dr. Perry to succeed Les Aspin.
All right, Wolf, thanks. Wolf Blitzer at the White House. Bernie?
Thank you, Judy. A federal judge ruled today the Senate Ethics Committee can review diaries belonging to Senator Bob Packwood. In ordering Packwood to turn over those materials, the judge said the Oregon Republican is not being denied his constitutional rights. Our man Bob Franken joins us now from the Hill with more on the story.
Well, Bernie, it's federal Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson who wants to hold a hearing on Thursday to set up the proper procedures. He says he wants to make sure the Ethics Committee, in his words, respect Senator Packwood's legitimate expectations of privacy. The judge called the material extremely personal and private in nature, which of course is what Senator Packwood has claimed all along.
My former wife never saw them, my children, no other staff member. So they were very, very personal. Is there humor in them? Sure. Is there nasty comments about some of you when I got mad at something? Sure. Are there warm comments about you? You bet. But personal, beyond all measure.
But the judge ruled the Ethics Committee would not violate Packwood's constitutional right to privacy by taking possession of his diaries. He also rejected the claim that turning over the diaries violated the Constitution's Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. Packwood has claimed the committee has been on a fishing expedition.
What we object to is giving the entire diary to the committee and letting them go through it to see if they can find other charges of which they have no knowledge.
Judge Jackson took possession of the diaries after Ethics Committee lawyers presented evidence there was tampering with the material. The diary suddenly surfaced as part of an investigation into sexual misconduct charges against Packwood, which expanded to what the committee chairman described as possible criminal violations. Senator Packwood's press person said there will be no statement from the senator right now. He and his lawyer, Jacob Stein, are studying the ruling from the judge to decide what they're going to do next, Bernie.
Thank you, Bob, and that really skirts to my question. Basically, what is the next step for this senator? He's being ordered to turn over the diaries, period.
Well, now the next step, of course, would be that hearing on Thursday, but the senator does have the potential for appeal. As a matter of fact, some members of the Senate are worried that the appeals process could literally drag on for years.
Okay, Bob Franken, thank you. From the Hill. Judy?
Congress will have a number of priorities to keep in mind, including the public's and the president's, as lawmakers reconvene tomorrow and prepare to tackle their 94 agenda. CNN's Candy Crowley joins us from Capitol Hill with a preview of the legislative and political challenges ahead right after this break.
Hi, Alex. Oh, nice cold. Oh, the pressure. Even my sinuses hurt.
Comes with the territory. You know, when you have a cold, it isn't always just up here. Sinuses can get congested, too. Well, that's why there's Advil Cold and Sinus. Doctors like its ingredients. One for aches, fever, sore throat pain. Another for sinus congestion. It's all connected.
Advil Cold and Sinus. Advanced formula for the cold season.
I was seeing my parents off, and I realized...
Dad, what do you got in here? Gardening equipment?
They've planned their retirement for a long time.
Common sense says the time to plan for your future is today.
One day, it's going to be our turn.
And Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can help you begin.
Debbie? One day, Jeff sat down to figure out how much we'll have for retirement.
How's it going, Professor?
Very funny. Take a look at this.
I thought we were doing a pretty good job. At this rate, we'll never retire.
Over 2 million Americans trust their retirement savings to Fidelity, with choices like Fidelity Asset Manager, a fund that gradually adjusts its portfolio to let you take advantage of changing market conditions with no sales charge. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to planning for retirement. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call 1-800-372-5959. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Tonight, 3 strikes and you're out. is putting criminals thrice convicted away for life the toughest way to tackle crime. The president supports this, but others aren't so sure. America's plan of attack. In the Crossfire, 7:30 Eastern tonight.
As President Clinton prepares to outline his goals for the nation in tomorrow night's State of the Union address, the American public has begun to weigh in with its own list of priorities. And while economic issues and health care were Americans' biggest concerns just 1 year ago, a new CNN USA Today Gallup poll shows those views are beginning to shift. Look at this. Crime is catapulted to the top of the list of American concerns. 37% say it's the most important problem facing the country today, with health care and unemployment coming in second and third. Now, that is a dramatic shift from just a few months ago when health care, as you know, topped the list. In fact, while 84% still perceive a crisis in the health care system, that number is down slightly from 90% last spring. Besides crime, other issues are competing with health care. One of these is welfare reform. Fully 90% of those surveyed in our poll say the welfare system is in crisis. 20% of those surveyed say welfare reform should be the higher priority for the Clinton administration. 16% say health care reform should be higher, and 62% said they should be equally high. Bill Schneider, what's going on here?
Bernie, the message from this poll is loud and clear. It's not the economy, stupid. A year ago it was. That was the paramount, even the obsessive concern of the voters. But now twice as many people, when asked to name the biggest problem facing the country, name non-economic problems rather than the economy. So if it's not the economy, what is it? Well, that's what the battle of 1994 is all about. It's a battle over control of the agenda. Each side wants to steer the debate towards its own best issues. For the president and for the Democrats, that's health care reform. For the Republicans, the issues are crime and welfare reform.
But according to our numbers, why is health care less an issue now?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that the inflation rate in health care has actually declined over the last year. It's the lowest level in 2 decades. Second, we're seeing declining economic anxiety. You know, health care really burst on the agenda in this country in 1990 when the recession started. When the economy got in trouble, it threatened an awful lot of white-collar people. Many of them were threatened with losing their jobs. A number of them did, and they lost their health care coverage as a result. Well, now, if the recession created the health care crisis, the economic recovery is alleviating that crisis. And that's leading a lot of Republicans to say boldly, as Senator Dole did the other day, there is no health care crisis. That's kind of risky because there's still maybe 250,000 white-collar workers who have lost their jobs and don't have health care. They're also trying to gain credibility on the issue by coming up with a Republican alternative. Right now, there are about 4 Republican alternatives. Senator Dole said the Republicans have got to agree on one.
Let's go to another category. In the simplest terms, what is driving this crime issue?
Bernie, it's not the crime rate. That's fairly flat. And even people report to us that they haven't had a greater personal experience with crime in the last year. But it's coming from the news. The news reports are particularly frightening to Americans, I think, in 2 senses. One is the reports of kids, particularly teenagers, with guns. That's terrifying to Americans. And it puts pressure on the government and on Congress to do something about gun control and also violence in the media. The second reason, I think, is random murders and assaults. Commuters, kids at slumber parties, tourists on the highway, all getting shot. No one is safe. Americans are terrified by those reports. Now, Republicans like to think that crime is their issue, but that's not so clear. The polls show that most voters don't think either party can really do much to reduce the crime rate. The Democrats have a couple of angles on crime. One is, of course, the gun control issue, where they have been friendlier to gun control advocates, and people are crying out for gun control right now. The other is that Clinton has managed pretty successfully to preempt the issue. He's enforced the death penalty. He favors it. He's for boot camps. He's for putting more cops on the streets. He has a crime bill. But that crime bill, which has passed the Senate, it's a tough bill, still has to make its way through the House of Representatives. And in the House, it's facing a lot of criticism from liberals who want to weaken it, and that could, I think, hurt the Democrats' credibility on the crime issue. Let me mention also the welfare reform. Clinton is also under pressure for that, not just from Republicans who are threatening to embarrass the president by passing their own welfare reform bill, but from moderate Democrats who say if President Clinton wants to prove his credentials as a new Democrat, he's got to come out loud and clear tomorrow night for welfare reform, and they're waiting to hear that in the State of the Union tomorrow night.
Thank you, Bill Schneider. Judy?
Well, whether it's welfare or crime or health, Congress is going to have to be focused on its priorities as lawmakers reconvene tomorrow and prepare to tackle their 1994 agenda. CNN's Candy Crowley joins us from Capitol Hill now with a preview of the legislative and political challenges ahead. Candy?
Judy, I am reminded of real estate agents who will tell you that when buying or selling a house, there are three main issues: location, location, location. So as the 103rd begins its second session, there are three issues here: healthcare, healthcare, and healthcare. It's only a slight exaggeration. Healthcare is the main issue, but it is not the only one. The 103rd Congress has a plate full.
It'll be a busy and productive year. Crime, welfare reform, healthcare reform will be major items, all of them. We hope also to complete action on the campaign finance reform bill. We'll take up a report on how to improve the efficiency of Congress itself, and we'll deal with several major environmental bills.
Healthcare, crime, and welfare are the three issues likely to dominate this legislative session. It's hard to think of three more volatile issues that strike closer to home. Add in the fact that this is an election year, and you've got the recipe for a lively session.
I'd hate to be an incumbent running for office from the Congress in the fall of 1994, having voted no on either health care reform or crime.
On both sides of the aisle, there is agreement that some kind of health care bill will pass Congress this year. The question is whether it will be the kind of mega legislation the president has proposed or something less than that.
From a political standpoint, I don't know how far we'll get. On health care, I sensed after being at home this past month that there's little desire and or understanding of a comprehensive bill. And I think the administration has just put it in too big a pot without making clear an understanding of, in a very simple way, of what is involved.
Those who will lead the health care reform battle believe the public's waning interest in the issue is a holiday lull, which is about to snap.
It will come back very strongly as the president, starting Tuesday night, really comes in hard on health care reform and then takes that across the country. It's going to be the national obsession in 1994. And the people are going to pick it up because the people are getting gouged by health care costs.
There is also agreement that an anti-crime bill of some sort will clear the 103rd. The question, again, is one of shape. The age-old battle to find a balance between punishment and prevention is already well underway. Still uncertain at this point is whether welfare reform will get anywhere this year. The president has been advised by some lawmakers not to bring it up so they can put their full attention on health care. But as you heard from Bill Schneider, health care and welfare reform are two things Republicans would really like to see on the agenda. And if the president doesn't bring it up, the Republicans might. Judy?
Candy, what about crime and crime legislation? And I know there's talk in all different quarters, but what are you hearing up there?
Crime is going to be tough, but that does seem to be, and perhaps this is, it's reflected in the poll number showing crime now the #1 issue, something we saw coming towards the end of last year. It seems that they will indeed get a crime bill. The question is, what shape is it going to take? We had an opening volley today from conservative Republicans, among them Senator Phil Gramm, who said if the House, the more liberal House, takes the crime bill that the Senate passed last year, which has some tough enforcement and punitive measures in it, if they take that bill and gut it, we will not let it go through. So you've already started that argument, and it tends to be one between a balance between whether to put the emphasis on more prisons or on rehabilitation. Judy?
All right, Candy Crowley at the White House. I'm sorry, at the Capitol. Thank you. A former vice president offers a hint about his political aspirations.
Well, I think about that every once in a while, probably once or twice an hour.
Dan Quayle may or may not run for president next time, but he is hitting the circuit. More on his remarks to a convention of Christian conservatives when Inside Politics returns.
Hey, anybody seen Jackson?
Yeah, he left for Seattle.
Seattle? What for?
You know, that project.
But the client changed the meeting. We gotta find him.
He's probably on the plane by now.
Look, I don't care. Get him.
Across all 50 states, Canada, and the Caribbean, Mobilecom can keep you informed of last-minute changes with text messaging for as little as $25 a month. Call now to be sure you know Mobilecom, 1-800-339-7676.
Every day, folks from across the country come to Miracle Ear with questions about hearing loss and hearing aids. Now you can get straight answers to some of the most common questions in this free booklet, Straight Talk About Hearing Loss. And that's exactly what you'll get. Call now and discover for yourself the answers to questions like these.
I have trouble hearing on the phone. Does that mean I have nerve deafness?
What makes Miracle Ear so different from the other brands I see advertised?
My husband just won't admit his hearing is getting worse. What can I do to help?
How do I know if one of those little Miracle Ear hearing aids can help me?
Get the answers to these questions and many more by calling for your free booklet. Both the call and the information are free. By calling this number now, Miracle Ear will also send you a list of hearing centers near you. Dial 1-800-247-7600. Call now.
Make your money work harder than ever. Call now for your free Wall Street Journal Guide to Understanding Money and Investing. It focuses on financial markets so you can make informed choices. Call now to get your guide free when you subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, where you'll find information you need to get ahead. Get 10 weeks of the journal for just $36 and the Guide to Understanding Money and Investing free with your paid subscription. Call toll-free 800-334-2900. That's 800-334-2900.
Christian conservatives are looking toward November and beyond. Over the weekend, 2,000 of them gathered in Florida to talk about their political agenda. Judging by the number of people inside and the number of protesters outside, it is clear their movement is gaining attention. CNN's John Zarrella reports.
Homophobia's got to go! On the sidewalk outside the Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Fort Lauderdale, at least 1,000 protesters, gay and lesbian groups, the National Organization for Women, marched. Well, I'm proud to be an American where it leads. Inside, about 2,000 Christian conservatives opposed to issues like gay rights and abortion attended a conference called Reclaiming America.
It's not through hate, not through violence, through the political process, through that, and of course, prayer.
Like oil and water, the two sides don't mix.
I've buried about 22 friends in the last 5 years, and it's because of this type of hate that doesn't even acknowledge the fact that I exist.
Those attending the conference say moral and religious values must be brought back into American life. The size of the gathering is a clear indication of the growing political strength of Republican Christian conservatives.
One of the news people said to our executive vice president, well, don't you think that people would be all upset about Christians trying to reclaim America? And I said to him, why should they be? We founded it in the first place.
Although he isn't officially running for anything yet, former Vice President Dan Quayle appears to be courting the movement. During his keynote speech, Quayle continued his family values theme.
It is in the best interests of the children to have both a mother and a father at home.
But Quayle was also careful not to alienate other factions of the Republican Party.
Reclaiming America is an inclusive goal, not exclusive.
They have to figure out a way to continue to attract the support of the religious right while not scaring away the more libertarian-oriented Republicans.
2 years ago, Christian conservatives comprised 1 in 7 voters, about 15% of the electorate. Increasingly, they are being viewed as the base of the Republican Party. There is little doubt Christian conservatives will be a powerful force in the 1994 and 96 elections. But whether they can dictate Republican Party direction and ideology may depend on just how quickly and successfully they can spread their gospel. John Zarrella, CNN, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
All Washington is buzzing about how Admiral Bobby Inman turned his back on the job of Secretary of Defense. What went wrong? Now Inman speaks out himself tonight, 9 Eastern, on Larry King Live on CNN.
How fast is
rising more than 3 points this month to 83.2. And low mortgage rates brought out the home buyers in December. Sales of existing homes surging nearly 7%. For all of last year, sales soared to the highest level in 14 years. That's the latest in business news. Inside Politics is next.
This is Inside Politics with Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff in Washington.
Thanks for joining us. On more than one occasion during his tenure in the White House, President Clinton has relied on a big speech and his communication skills to jumpstart his own agenda. Tonight's State of the Union address will be no different, as Mr. Clinton lays out his ideas for fixing what he says are the country's biggest problems. CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer joins us with a preview. Wolf?
Judy, White House officials say the president will try tonight to convince the American public that he remains true to his so-called new Democrat positions, including getting tough on crime and ending welfare, quote, as we know it. The president spent much of the day making his trademark last-minute changes in his State of the Union address.
Yeah, we've been through a zillion rewrites.
He paused when asked what was the most difficult part.
I won't know that till tonight.
His aides say he'll speak for 45 to 50 minutes, but he could go even longer. A key part of the president's strategy, disarm Republicans by talking tough on crime and welfare. Responding to polls showing Americans are most concerned about crime, the president will endorse the so-called 3 strikes and you're out provision of the Senate crime bill, meaning 3 violent felonies and you're no longer eligible for parole. He'll call for building more prisons and tougher gun control, including a ban on assault weapons, as well as 100,000 more police on the street, the kind of rhetoric endorsed by Republicans.
And the American people want decisive action on crime in America.
The president will also promise to reform the nation's welfare system by the end of the year, though aides concede he will delay introducing a package until the spring, when health care reform has already started going through the legislative process. The president will propose a 2-year cutoff for welfare benefits for most recipients, and he will stress that health care reform will automatically remove people from welfare, since they will no longer feel it necessary to receive health care benefits by staying on welfare. He'll stress his administration's accomplishments, but focus on the year ahead, especially the need to pass health care reform this year.
He wants to lay the groundwork for next year's agenda. First and foremost, getting health care reform passed, guaranteeing private insurance to every American, and he thinks that by pushing that forward tonight, we can get some momentum behind the bill.
When it comes to the economy, Mr. Clinton will stress the need to continue growth, to cut the deficit, and to keep down inflation and interest rates. White House officials say the president won't break any new ground tonight. Instead, he simply hopes to galvanize public support for his agenda. Judy?
Wolf, why isn't the White House or the president wanting to break any new ground tonight?
Well, senior officials here say that while those of us who follow the president's activities on a day-to-day basis are fully aware of his initiatives in health care reform, crime, welfare reform, the economy, by and large, the American public is not. This is a prime-time speech he's going to be delivering tonight, and it's addressed to the rank and file out there, and he's hoping to get his message across to everyone, not just those of us inside the Beltway who follow his activities on a day-to-day basis.
Wolf, I understand you've been doing some reporting about who Mrs. Clinton may be sitting next to tonight. Anything you want to tell us or share with us at this point?
That's a good guessing game. We're told that there will be some average Americans sitting with the First Lady up in the gallery, people who will be representative of some of the issues he's trying to focus on: crime, welfare reform, health care, 3 or 4 or 5 people. And there will be one special guest who is perhaps representative of the chamber itself. And at this point, I don't feel it's right to speculate who that might be.
All right, but at least in terms of the average Americans, a little reminiscent of President Reagan.
Right, and that is deliberate. He'll try to make it clear that he wants the average people, average Americans, to identify with some of the things he's going to be proposing.
All right, Wolf Blitzer at the White House. We know you'll be there. Thanks. Bernie?
Thank you, Judy. President Clinton is expected to lay out, as we've heard, quite an agenda in tonight's State of the Union address, but whether or not his plans come to fruition will depend a lot on the actions of two very influential men. Both are with us today on the Hill. We're joined by Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell of Maine and Senate Republican Leader Bob Dole of Kansas. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thanks, Bernie.
You're welcome. First, Senator Dole, are Republicans really tougher on crime than those Democrats and that man to your right?
Well, I think we'll wait and see. We passed a pretty strong Senate bill, 94-4, so it was a strong bipartisan bill. There are probably some features that Republicans didn't like, some Democrats didn't like, but it was a good, tough piece of legislation. I'm hoping the president will endorse the entire package tonight.
So is it a myth that Republicans are tougher than Democrats?
Oh, no, it's a reality. The Democrats are finally coming our way. They're beginning to see the error of their ways in the past, and we think it's very helpful.
George Mitchell, are you going to take that?
Well, I think Republicans talk tougher on crime like they talk tougher on the deficit, but don't do much about it. I'm a former prosecutor at the state and federal level. I think I've sent more people to jail than almost all of the Republicans in the Senate put together, so I don't think it makes any difference one party or the other. The reality is that we have a serious problem which we've got to deal with, and it isn't a question of which party is tougher, it's what's right for American society. I think the Senate has gone a long way in passing a bill. The president's support was instrumental in getting that done. It was, after all, a bill drafted in a committee controlled by Democrats, chaired by Democrat Senator Biden, improved on the floor in some respects. I don't agree with all those provisions in the bill, but I think it's basically a good, strong bill, and I think we're going to pass good, tough, effective crime legislation early this year.
Tough enough to please you, Senator Dole?
Well, we have to wait and see. There's been a practice around here of passing a tough bill and then sort of taking the guts out of it in conference. The liberal Democrats gang up on the conferees or whatever happens. Something always happens, and the tough provisions never make it back. But I think this year it's going to be a bit different. We hope it is. The American people hope it is, and we're prepared to cooperate with the president, with Senator Mitchell, and other Democrats in the conference. We've already done that in passing the bill in the Senate.
We're going to take a break right now, and when we return, I'm going to ask each of you, where is the crisis? Is it in crime? Is it in welfare? Or is it in health? Back in a moment.
Tonight, President Clinton gives his view of America and its future. CNN will be there with live coverage followed by expert analysis from Washington insiders. The State of the Union address, tonight at 9 Eastern on CNN.
With ordinary cat litter, odor can linger, but Scoop Away controls odor better and lasts up to 3 times longer. It absorbs liquid waste into solid clumps. Remove them, and you remove the source of the odor. No need to change your litter box. Just change your litter brand to Scoop Away.
Explain what the Band-Aid is doing on your left hand.
Well, I cut my finger when I was cutting bread. Unbelievable as it may sound.
Now we return to our two guests on Capitol Hill. Senator Mitchell, where is the real crisis? Is it in crime? Is it welfare? Is it in health care?
All three are serious problems, and I think no useful purpose is served in debating the fine issue of what is or is not a crisis. There are very serious problems in crime, in welfare, and in health care. It is our responsibility as Americans and as public officials to deal with them, and I hope and we'll try very hard to see that we do deal with all three of them this year.
Senator Dole, where's the crisis?
Well, I don't disagree with Senator Mitchell. I think we have serious problems. Whether if you can't find a job and you're on welfare, you don't see any way to get ahead, that's certainly a personal crisis. Crime, if you live in a neighborhood or drive-by shooting, whatever, you're a victim, that's certainly a crisis. And health care, one thing about health care, though, everybody in America can get treatment. And so there are serious problems everywhere. If you don't have insurance or if your rates are too high and you can't buy insurance, I don't think we disagree. I think we've got some very serious problems. We may agree on the approach to a solution, but I think we understand that there are problems. They need to be dealt with.
Senator Mitchell, Senator Moynihan of New York has said the crisis is not in health care, it's in welfare. Would you like to muzzle Senator Moynihan?
I don't think either I or anybody else can or should muzzle Senator Moynihan. He's intelligent, he's articulate, he's outspoken and independent, and I think the people of New York and people across the country like that. Obviously, we don't agree on everything. This is a democratic society, but I believe this, in fact, I know this. Senator Moynihan will lead the way this year toward passage of a comprehensive health care reform bill that will include the essential element of guaranteed private health insurance for every American that can't be canceled or can't be lost. I think he's committed to that just as surely as I am and the President is, and I hope Senator Dole and all of our colleagues are.
Now, gentlemen, don't get dizzy as I quickly change subjects, but Senator Dole, how much has President Clinton been wounded by Whitewater?
Oh, I don't think very much. I think the President had a slow start last year and a strong finish. He'll do a good job tonight. We'll respond in about 11 minutes, but, you know, I don't think we know what the agenda is this year. There shouldn't be any real confrontation for a while, but this is an even-numbered year, so there will be some politics enter into it sooner or later.
You said that with a straight face, let us note.
I did.
Senator Mitchell, has Senator Dole been overly partisan in pressing this Whitewater special counsel business?
I wouldn't say overly partisan.
Underly partisan?
Yeah, about right.
Yeah, about right. I said earlier that obviously, as he's just indicated, and we all acknowledge, this is a political, a competitive system. And my view is that a special counsel has been named. He's a Republican. He's a man of reputation and integrity. He will conduct a thorough, fair investigation, and we ought to let that occur and let it run its course, and I think that's the best course to take.
Did the White House make a mistake in fighting this idea?
Well, that's past us now. Special counsel has been named, is conducting an investigation.
I know that, but what do you think? Did they make a mistake?
In what?
In fighting the idea.
Well, ultimately, the White House went along with the idea, so I think that's what really counts.
Senator Dole, you satisfied?
I haven't said a word. I've said, as far as I know, Robert Fisk, a man of integrity, and he's had a lot of experience. I still think there ought to be, just from the standpoint of oversight, the Banking Committee and the House and the Senate ought to take a look. We're going to withhold any effort to have a select committee for a while and see what happens. Because, you know, there was a loss of government funds, and it seems to me we do have some responsibility in Congress for oversight of S&Ls. That's one reason we got in trouble in the first place. But, you know, let's see what happens. Let's let Mr. Fisk get on with his work, and I think he'll do a thorough job.
Senator Mitchell, how about Senator Dole's idea of letting the Banking Committee hack away at this?
I don't think that would be wise or appropriate for the following reason. The law now is, as a result of the Iran-Contra case, that any congressional testimony that is the result of immunity provided could effectively preclude or make impossible any subsequent criminal investigation and prosecution. That's the status of the law. And so I think it's best, a special counsel has been named, a man of integrity and reputation. He's not going to whitewash anything. He's going to get the facts and lay them out there and take whatever action he deems appropriate. I think it's best to let that go forward unimpeded by any other action.
Let me make a translation, Senator Dole. In effect, the man sitting to your right has said, your idea is not going to happen.
Well, that's what he said today, but I hope I can convince him otherwise. We're not asking for a big dog and pony show with a lot of lights and cameras and bells and whistles. But I do think the Banking Committee, either in the House or Senate, has some responsibility. May not have to call any witnesses. I'm not suggesting we compromise anybody's investigation. But there ought to be at least, you know, some look at whether or not anything happened that could have been avoided, that could have saved the taxpayers money.
Gentlemen, what is the most basic thing both parties and you two can do to clean up your image in the minds of the American public? The most basic thing.
I believe there are two, Bernie. First, to act on those matters that are of concern to the American people and affect their daily lives. Crime, health care, welfare, issues of that type. If we can demonstrate that what we're doing does affect in a positive way their daily lives, I believe the current trends will be reversed. I don't think Congress will ever be a beloved and revered institution. It never has been, but I think we can reduce some of the cynicism that now exists.
Quickly,
secondly, to change the campaign finance laws to reform those. I think that's the second thing we could do.
Senator Dole, quickly to you.
But I don't may not agree totally with the first or the second, but I think we have to do those things. And I think we need to make a better effort to let American people understand all the things we've done over the years to, as far as perks are concerned and other things we've done to tighten up to make certain that nobody abuses the process. Senator Mitchell has done a good job as a majority leader. The Speaker and Bob Michael have done a good job on the House side, but sometimes it's hard to get our message out to the American people of what we've done. You know, you take a look at Congress, and I would just say overall it's a pretty good group of men and women, and they're men and women of integrity, and I think we just need to, you know, maybe make a better case.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us in Inside Politics.
Thank you, Bernie.
Good luck in your second session. Right. Judy?
Well, Bernie, while you've been talking to Senators Dole and Mitchell, there has been a settlement announced in the Michael Jackson case. We'll have a live report when we return.
There's only one Florida, but there are so many ways to see it. Of course, you can't see it if you're not here. Call for a free vacation guide.
Hey, gang, catch this! There's a new kind of taste, a new kind of flavor, a new kind of orange. You just gotta savor. Carefree, script-free, struggle-free, regularity. It's new, orange flavored Maylite. Huh? Daily fiber therapy.
Fiber? Fiber?
Fiber?
Introducing the clean, crisp taste of, that's right, fiber. From the makers of Maalox. If only all fiber tasted this good.
Okay, so I tend to put things off. For me, the time just has to be right. Like, I meet this amazing girl, and she's coming over tonight. It's like with Rogaine. I've been meaning to check it out. This is important to me. I've thought about calling lots of times. You know when I called? Today. This was my time.
It could be your time, too. To find out more about Rogaine with minoxidil, call this 800 number now. You'll get a free information kit filled with facts to help answer your questions about Rogaine. And since you need a prescription to get Rogaine, you'll also get a list of local doctors offering a free private consultation to help you decide if Rogaine is right for you. So call today.
Hi.
Hi. Nice place.
Call now, 1-800-607-0111 for a free information kit.
Okay.
As we just suggested, there are new developments at this hour in Michael Jackson's legal battle against a teenager's allegation that he was molested by the pop star. CNN's Paul Verkaman joins us now live from Santa Monica, California, with an update. Paul?
Judy, just a short while ago, a bailiff in the Superior Court in Santa Monica announced that the attorneys in the Michael Jackson molestation case on both sides had gone behind chambers and that this was basically settled. What has happened here is we have a resolution in this case between both parties, Michael Jackson's, of course, and the attorney for the 14-year-old boy who's accusing of molestation. They are not revealing the financial amount of the settlement at this time and say they will not do so. Now, Michael Jackson's attorney said that it was time for Michael Jackson to get on with his life, to move on from this, but they added emphatically that Michael Jackson in no way is admitting any sort of guilt. Meanwhile, the attorney for that 14-year-old boy says that the boy has seen some of the best psychologists in the world, and they felt that it was in the best interest of this boy to settle this case. The attorney also said that he was pleased with the outcome. Now, the criminal investigations into the alleged molestation charges continue, and the attorney for the boy said that the boy would, you could look at it this way, could testify in that criminal trial. He does not have to testify in a criminal trial under California law, which says that a minor who is involved in a sex crime does not have to testify. So here at the Santa Monica courthouse, a resolution in the Michael Jackson civil molestation case, although terms of a settlement not announced. Judy?
All right, Paul, and just to be clear, this is a settlement just in the civil case.
Absolutely crystal clear. Civil only, criminal proceedings continue.
All right, Paul Verkaman, thank you from Santa Monica. And we will be back with more of Inside Politics after this.
Some nights, my husband Ben is out there for hours, in spite of his minor arthritis pain. When he has a flare-up, he takes Advil. For minor arthritis pain, doctors recommend Advil most. And Advil's gentler on his stomach than aspirin. He says Advil lets him get back to doing what he loves. And without the pain, he sleeps better. Says he wakes up feeling ready for another day. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
You've waited for a Buick. You've waited for Buick quality at a low sticker price. You've waited for a car with Buick's reputation for safety. It seems you've waited for a century. Buick Century, with standard driver airbag, anti-lock brakes, power locks and windows, and more. All for $14,995. So don't wait any longer. See your Buick dealer today. This is the value of the century.
I was seeing my parents off, and I realized...
Dad, what do you got in here? Gardening equipment?
They've planned their retirement for a long time.
Common sense says the time to plan for your future is today.
One day, it's going to be our turn.
And Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can help you begin.
Debbie? One day, Jeff sat down to figure out how much we'll have for retirement.
How's it going, Professor?
Very funny. Take a look at this.
I thought we were doing a pretty good job. At this rate, we'll never retire.
Over 2 million Americans trust their retirement savings to Fidelity. With choices like Fidelity Asset Manager, a fund that gradually adjusts its portfolio to let you take advantage of changing market conditions with no sales charge. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to planning for retirement. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call 1-800-372-5959. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Even as Congress reconvened today, 2 more members called it quits. Representative William Ford, Democrat of Michigan, says he will retire.
No, but I used to be... I was younger and I had braces and I wasn't very good.
You want to try again?
Yeah.
Held, and none said that it did, and as a result, it was dropped. Mr. Clinton says finding a replacement for Aspen after Bobby Inman stepped aside was not difficult.
It wasn't easy to fill. It wasn't hard to fill. I mean, we had an abundance of talented people to consider, but I asked Secretary Perry, and he said yes, it wasn't difficult at all. We didn't go on a big search here. We had a very short list, and I quickly narrowed it to one. I had an interview with one person. I asked him if he'd take the job, and he did. I don't think that qualifies as difficult. Now, I have had some difficult positions to fill. This one wasn't.
Perry also says there is nothing in his background that he knows about that could cause any embarrassment to himself or to the president, including any problems relating to withholding Social Security taxes for household help. Judy?
Well, if I hear what the president and what Mr. Perry are saying about nobody was reluctant, but there were these reports over the weekend, and he did say that initially he didn't want to, he wasn't able to say yes. Why would the White House want anybody who was at all reluctant, even the slightest bit, after what they went through with Admiral Inman?
Well, Dr. Perry, his close associate...
Nearly 297 million shares traded. The other key indexes all closed lower as well. NYNEX closed down a quarter. The Baby Bell is cutting nearly 17,000 jobs by the end of '96. The cost of those cuts reflected in the company's $1.25 billion fourth quarter loss. Flagstar losing a quarter, the restaurant operator closing or selling 270 restaurants over the next year and a half, including Denny's, Hardee's, and Quincy's. Texaco gaining 3/4 after posting an 8% increase in fourth quarter profits. And IBM rallying 3 3/8. Tomorrow, Big Blue expected to post its first quarterly profit in nearly 2 years. That's the latest in business news. Inside Politics is next.
This is Inside Politics with Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff in Washington.
Thanks for joining us. Deputy Defense Secretary William Perry says he is ready to step in where some bigger names have refused to tread the hot seat at the helm of the Pentagon. President Clinton announced today that he is nominating Perry to replace Defense Secretary Les Aspin and fill the void left by Bobby Inman's surprise withdrawal. We get details from our senior White House correspondent, Wolf Blitzer. Wolf?
Judy, President Clinton says that Deputy Defense Secretary William Perry emerged over the weekend as his clear favorite to succeed Les Aspin at the Pentagon. The president says Perry is the right person for the job, the best indeed qualified right now, someone who knows how to cut defense spending while at the same time taking advantage of the latest in defense-related technologies. Unlike Admiral Bobby Inman, who told reporters last month he needed to achieve a so-called comfort level with the president before accepting the nomination, Perry was effusive in his praise for Mr. Clinton, and Perry strongly denied the president had to twist his arm to accept the nomination.
I did not have to be persuaded to take the job. I met with the president to discuss this job Friday morning, and I left that meeting fully prepared.
Associates at the Pentagon, as well as senior administration officials, are going out of their way right now to make it clear that Dr. Perry himself was never reluctant. He wanted, though, to have an opportunity to discuss the ramifications of becoming Defense Secretary with his wife, as well as his 5 children who were spread out all over the country. He had an opportunity over the weekend to discuss all of those ramifications, and by Sunday afternoon, he was able to tell Vice President Gore if the president still wanted him, he was, of course, very interested. And it was only this morning, Monday morning, that the president finally made up his mind and asked Dr. Perry to succeed Les Aspin.
All right, Wolf, thanks. Wolf Blitzer at the White House. Bernie?
Thank you, Judy. A federal judge ruled today the Senate Ethics Committee can review diaries belonging to Senator Bob Packwood. In ordering Packwood to turn over those materials, the judge said the Oregon Republican is not being denied his constitutional rights. Our man Bob Franken joins us now from the Hill with more on the story.
Well, Bernie, it's federal Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson who wants to hold a hearing on Thursday to set up the proper procedures. He says he wants to make sure the Ethics Committee, in his words, respect Senator Packwood's legitimate expectations
to take on the job. I had a meeting with my family that evening because it's not just me that's getting into this job. I put them under considerable strains when I do it too. And we had a follow-up meeting on Saturday morning with the White House where I told them that if I had to accept the job at that time, my answer would have to be no. I met then with the Vice President, and he told me I could take my time, take some more time on the decision, meet with my family further. I took advantage of that, and on Sunday afternoon I called the Vice President back and said, if you still want me for your Secretary of Defense, I'm eager to serve.
The president denies that he offered the job to anyone else. He insists that news reports that he did offer it to Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Sam Nunn and that Nunn turned it down were simply not true. He said he did speak to Nunn a year ago during the transition. At that time, Nunn did tell the president he was not interested in the Pentagon slot. He asked Nunn in recent days whether that position still